The muscle cars of the 80s are certainly powerful and stylish cars that have become iconic, but some of them, despite their ambitions, failed to live up to expectations. Here's a list of 10 cars that can be called the worst among the 80s muscle cars. 1. Chevrolet Camaro, 1982 to 1985. The Chevrolet Camaro has long been an iconic name in the muscle car world, known for its aggressive stance and powerful engines. However, the 1982 to 1985 models are often regarded as a letdown for muscle car enthusiasts. In these years, Camaro made a shift toward fuel efficiency and environmental standards, which meant less power under the hood. The V8 engines were notably weaker compared to their predecessors, and while the car's styling remained bold and aggressive, it didn't quite live up to the performance standards set by the earlier models. If you're considering a Camaro from this era, it's essential to remember that while the car still has the iconic looks, it may not provide the heart-pounding performance you expect from a true muscle car. It's better suited for those looking for a project car or a vehicle that looks good cruising around, rather than someone seeking raw, untamed horsepower. For enthusiasts, finding a late 70s or early 90s Camaro might offer a better balance of style and power. 2. Ford Mustang, 1982 to 1984. The 1982 to 1984 Ford Mustang, especially with the introduction of the SVO model, shifted away from the traditional big V8 engines and leaned into turbocharging. While this might have been an innovative approach for the time, the turbocharged engines just didn't deliver the same thrilling performance as the naturally aspirated V8s that came before them. This was a time when Ford tried to be more fuel efficient and environmentally friendly, but it also meant the Mustang lost much of its muscle car spirit. For anyone looking to buy one of these, be aware that the turbocharged SVO is a niche model with a cult following, but its turbo powertrain doesn't offer the excitement of older V8 powered Mustangs. The best advice would be to seek out a later 5.0 V8 model from the 1980s, or even an early Fox Body 5.0 model, which offers more power, better driving dynamics, and that familiar Mustang performance. 3. Pontiac Trans Am, 1982 to 1984. The Pontiac Trans Am of the early 80s became a shadow of its former self. Originally a beast with powerful V8 engines and eye-catching designs, it was now slowed down by the stringent fuel economy standards and new emissions regulations. The engines were weaker, and the exterior design, while still bold, lost the aggressive flair of earlier models. This combination made it harder for the Trans Am to compete with rivals that were still pushing the limits of performance. If you're a die-hard fan of the Trans Am, you may still find joy in restoring one of these cars. But for those looking for a more exciting ride, it might be best to skip these early 80s models. Instead, look for a later 1980s or even 1990s Firebird with the 5.7L V8. This would provide more power and a better overall driving experience while still offering some of that classic Trans Am charm. 4. Chevrolet Corvette, 1980 to 1982. The Chevrolet Corvette has always been a symbol of American automotive excellence. However, during the 1980 to 1982 period, the Corvette's performance took a hit. The V8 engines were down on power due to new emissions regulations, and the car was heavily criticized for its lackluster acceleration and driving feel. While the Corvette still had its sleek looks, it didn't have the raw, thrilling performance that had made it famous in previous decades. If you're a Corvette fan, these early 80s models might leave you underwhelmed. Consider investing in a mid to late 80s Corvette for a better balance of performance and design. These models still offer that quintessential Corvette look and feel, but with significantly improved performance and handling, making them a much better investment in the long run. 5. Dodge Charger, 1983 to 1987. The Dodge Charger, a name synonymous with muscle and power, lost much of its identity during the 1983 to 1987 period. Gone were the days of the legendary big block V8 engines. In their place were smaller, more fuel-efficient engines. While these engines may have been practical, they couldn't match the raw power of the earlier Chargers. The Charger had transitioned from a high-performance muscle car to more of an economical option with a sporty look. For those looking for a true muscle car experience, these Chargers won't satisfy your need for speed. However, if you're into 1980s cars and like the idea of restoring a vintage model, the 1983 to 1987 Charger could still make for a fun project car. But if you're after power and presence, look for earlier models or hold out for the more recent Charger iterations that pack a real punch. launch. 6. Buick Regal Grand National 1981 to 1987. The Buick Regal Grand National holds a cult following among enthusiasts, but even this legendary model faced a dip in performance during the 1980s. Although the Grand National's turbocharged engine was still potent, it didn't deliver the same fiery performance as earlier models. The 1980s cars, while still stylish, were more about practicality and fuel efficiency than raw power. If you're into classic turbocharged performance, the Grand National could still be worth your time. Again, don't expect the thrill that older muscle cars offered. If you want a true powerhouse with that 80s edge, look for a model with the GNX package, which offered much higher levels of performance and is considered a standout in the lineup. 7. Chevrolet El Camino 1980 to 1987. While the El Camino is a unique and interesting take on the muscle car, the 1980 to 1987 versions fell flat in terms of performance. The El Camino, a mix of a car and a pickup truck, didn't have the raw muscle or performance that defined its earlier years. With less power under the hood and a less exciting driving experience, the El Camino became more of a curiosity than a must-have muscle car. The El Camino may still have its charm, but if you're looking for a high-performance car, it's not the best option. If you're interested in a vintage muscle car with some utility, consider looking at the earlier versions of the El Camino, particularly those from the 1970s, which had more powerful engines and better performance metrics. 8. Ford Thunderbird Turbo 1984 to 1988. The Ford Thunderbird, always known for its elegant design, took a turn toward turbocharged performance in the mid-80s. Unfortunately, the turbocharged versions of the Thunderbird didn't live up to expectations. While they looked stylish, the turbo engines didn't deliver the raw power that muscle car fans were craving. The result? A Thunderbird that felt more like a luxury car than a performance machine. If you love the Thunderbird's aesthetics, there's still something to be said about the 1980s models. However, if performance is what you're after, you might want to consider a V8 powered version from earlier or later years. The V8 models, like those from the late 90s, bring more power, performance, and better driving dynamics. 9. Oldsmobile Cutlass 442 1980 to 1987. The Oldsmobile Cutlass 442 was once a performance icon, but by the mid-1980s, it had lost much of its muscle car spirit. With a shift toward more fuel-efficient and less powerful engines, the Cutlass 442 was no longer the powerhouse it had once been. The design remained stylish, the performance lagged behind what many enthusiasts were hoping for. If you're looking for a classic 442 with muscle, it's best to seek out models from the 60s or 70s. These are the years that cemented the Cutlass 442's place in muscle car history. For the 80s versions, storing one might be a fun project, but don't expect to be blown away by the driving experience. 10. Mercury Capri 1982 to 1986. The Mercury Capri, which had once been a solid option for those looking for a sporty compact car, struggled to make a lasting impact in the 1980s. With a weak engine and uninspiring performance, the Capri just couldn't compete with other more iconic models from the era. The car still had a stylish design, but the lack of power left much to be desired. For fans of small, sporty cars, the Capri might still be a fun restoration project. However, if you're after a car with both style and performance, the Capri isn't the best choice. Instead, look for something like the Ford Mustang or even the Chevy Camaro, which provided more power and better driving experiences. Conclusion: the 1980s were a transitional period for muscle cars. Many of the models that had once defined American performance were now adapting to stricter regulations, fuel efficiency, and changing consumer preferences. While some of these cars are still beloved by collectors and enthusiasts, they often don't live up to the legendary performance that made them famous. If you're looking to own a muscle car from this era, do your research, know what to expect in terms of performance, and make sure the car still delivers on the excitement you're after.